but if the camera and lighting is responding and going with the feeling of the performance and giving the space to that, then that's the success. Is that, yes, the job you're on is very important right now. Do your best with it, but it's not the be all end all. But if you come marching in, you say, oh, I need 10 more minutes, I got to figure this thing out, this is super important. That is not important to the overall scope of all of the people's work that day. I'm Godfrey, a cinematographer originally from Nova Scotia, Canada, Maritime Provinces. I tend to work most places in North America these days, but I live in Toronto and spent a lot of time in America. I lived in America for about 10 years. I went to AFI, actually. I went to the American Film Institute Conservatory program. I was a grip for a while. I came up as a camera assistant. I went through the trainee program, and I got to see and experience a lot of different people, commercials, big movies, small movies, TV. I had a lot of time as a camera assistant working on set, side by each, with a lot of great people, a lot of talented people, and camera assistant, camera operators, cinematographers. And I always was cautious not to be too forward about the fact that I knew I wanted to be a cinematographer, but I was not hiding it. And I got to a place where I realized if you are absolutely accomplishing your job, what you're there for, and you have that down, then you can pull aside the cinematographer and ask questions, or you can pick that person's brain if they have time. You just have to get a great gauge of when that time is or how that time works. And then what you find is that you'll start getting extra tasks. I used to be the person who would push myself into the role to say, I'll be the person who calls the lab every day. I'll talk to the colorist. I'll get all the reports. So you're accomplishing the job you have as a camera assistant, but then you're also gaining extra experience by working and being closely related to the cinematographer. And you'll find most cinematographers, I certainly do it now, are happy to talk about what it is they're trying to figure out. You become sort of that liaison, or you're sort of interested in picking up those ideas. So it's a very observational thing and sort of studying and practicing, but also you do have to be on top of your job. But once you get that down, then it's okay. So a great way for me at that time, I had upgraded to focus puller, a great way to, for me to make another transition, because of the idea that if you're good at something, people always want you to do it. That's fair, of course. But if you want to change your path, you have to start saying no or make some other change. And for me, I decided, okay, well, I'll go back to school when I was 29, and I moved to California, and I went to the American Film Institute. I applied, I got in, I had all this experience, so I had a pretty good resume. So I decided to go to AFI. That was my path. It meant that I got to go somewhere else, establish myself there at the Film Institute. And so that's one way of doing it, we used to call it the prairie upgrade, where you move to Vancouver, and on the plane you scratch off your business cards and write your new job in. So there's a version of that. I'm not sure I would recommend relocating, because there's a lot of networks in certain places, but there is something to it. But in terms of trying to redefine yourself, it's tough. I think the advice I would give on it is you just have to keep shooting. There's something about sticking to it and longevity here that it does take a long time. You're going to see all over the place people who strike it and, within a year are miles ahead in the field. Fair. That's not a lottery most of us can afford to play. So it's a lot of just determination. But I think it comes down to just make it known. Make it known that that's what you want to do. You're fine where you are, but don't be afraid to say it. I think sometimes people Some people give the advice like, oh, don't say you want to be something else because people will judge you differently. I think that's wrong. I think you need to be confident in what you're doing and very on top of it and very aware that you're playing a very valuable role, but don't be afraid to say, but this is what I truly want to do. Because as I experienced, when the small opportunity comes forward, they'll go, oh, let's get them. Or when you need support and Panavision or Whites or somebody knows that you're trying to make a go for it and you get a small opportunity, they'll help you out because they know they're rooting for you. So I think it's about that kind of idea is my advice. There's so many paths to doing it. I moved away and came back. That worked somehow. Is it going to work for everybody? No, I can't prescribe what it's going to be, but I think that would be what I think is important. You can't say that there's one roadmap here. Like I'm happy to talk about my story. There's no one application. It's the kind of beautiful thing about being a cinematographer, a camera person, or an artist, but especially in filmmaking, is that everybody's got a different story and there's always a different way. And that's the life experience that you bring to something. And you always find yourself in a different place, in a further place, in some place you didn't expect. It's kind of a great thing. So if I was to sit and write down, this is exactly what I did note for note, it's not going to work for anybody else. But there's ideas and there's philosophies and there's approaches to it that are taken from it. But I think that's important to realize is that there's no recipe here. We're doing a bit of freestyle. And if you're paying attention and you're keen and you're curious about people and they're curious about you, then I think you get there. I often describe the way that I work, and it evolves. And that's what's great about this job is you get to work with different directors, different ways of working, and you learn from that and you collaborate on different levels. And sometimes you put the weight more in lighting, sometimes more in camera, sometimes it's a bit more of both. But I've always sort of described the way that I like to work, or at least the way I have liked to work until now. Moving forward, I'm going to continue being curious and exploring what it is I like to do. But I do have a deep respect for, because I work in narrative, performance, scripted, I do have a pretty deep respect for performance and the space to do that. So I'm not the kind of camera person that is very prescriptive. I will do my best efforts to bring the day's work or scene towards what I think is going to be the most successful. But I'm not the kind of person that says, here's exactly where you stand, here's exactly where you look to the actors. I'm not manipulating. I often, shot lists are great, and mapping your plan out is great, but I often don't like to do too much in terms of puppeteering, because I think there's something magical about the observation of a scene or the work that it is you're doing, and responding to it. Because it's something maybe you wouldn't have come up with 3 weeks ago, 2 months ago, when you were drawing overhead diagrams, on a plane somewhere of some idea that you had. And so I like to be a bit more responsive, because I giving space to a performance, if it's got to feel right, and if we are concentrating on the camera and lighting, we might not be getting as much of the feeling. But if the camera and lighting is responding and going with the feeling of the performance and giving the space to that, then that's the success. But if it's inverted, for me, the way I think about it, I think we might not have as an emotional experience. It's just my opinion of it. And so I call what I do a little bit more, I work in response to something, which sometimes means you got to prepare people for this, because people want to know you have a secure plan to top a day. And surely we all do. We're going to make it. But it means having time to work a scene out. What what a great place to have an opportunity to finally have a location or a stage, finally have the performers all there to actually play something out and work out how it feels emotionally and how it feels natural, and then bring the photography to it, rather than, okay, you stand here, say 3 lines, you go over here, you go over there, and that can work. That can absolutely work. But I like to be open to responding to what feels good, because then, kind of in a way, then our job gets easier. I think you can figure a scene out. You go, oh, it's not as complex as I thought it was going to be. It's simple. Here's this. Or you can get the inverse and you go, oh no. But that's how I've approached things. I think there's a lot of films and projects out there that require a whole number of other things. But in the work that I've done, for the most part, which is a bit more dramatic, scripted, dramatic narrative, and not large in scale, that's how I like to work. Then there are the times where you need to storyboard and plan out, and there's VFX and all those sorts of things. Also a fascinating time, and a great challenge to come up with how to do those things. But yeah, so that's my response technique. That kind of parallels how the career works, is that you're in this kind of constant dance, this sort of response to what opportunities you have, what works, what doesn't, what falls flat. I mean, all those opportunities where you swing and you miss at something, great. That's great, because then it's on to the next one. There's something about momentum which is important. Is that, yes, the job you're on is very important right now. Do your best with it, but it's not the be all end all. Put into it what you feel you put into it, learn from it, let it go, and focus what's next. So there's always a bit of like, I think to me it's always a bit of, what are you doing now? Where's that going next? And that translates to how I work as well now on movies or pictures, is that the next job I take, or the one I'm interested in, is always in some kind of response to what I've done before. It's like, oh, so I did that. Now I really want to try and move here, or I'm chasing this, or I really want to do something. And it can boil down to any number of things. It could be camera work, movement. It could be how far I push the LUT. It could be how saturated this is. It could be less lighting, could be more lighting, those sorts of things. And so that's an interesting part about, it's kind of parallels through the whole thing, is be very aware and keenly focused on what you're doing. But it's not necessarily about that. It's about where you're going to jump from that place. I guess that maybe also parallels into, how to transition from one thing to another. Do that job really well. Be keenly aware of it. Learn from it, but use it as to how does it get you to the next place. Jump from that. There's something to it. And it comes with being able to say out loud that you are looking for the next thing. I've always been very conscious to give space to actors, performers, directors, and those people, everybody, but especially that core place. That's a very delicate and vulnerable place to be putting yourself on the line. And there can often be a priority of chaos, not chaos, but there can often be this sort of set up priority where it's all this work that's going on. And then can you imagine you just waiting, and then all of a sudden somebody says, okay, everybody quiet, go. That's a lot of pressure. So there's something to be said about creating that space for that. And I think it's very important to cinematographers to realize that you do need to make a sort of safe and open space for this work, for that work to be accomplished. Because I worry sometimes that I'm getting in the way, and because of some technical thing or something that I'm chasing. It's like, oh, I really want to have this light do this thing. Is it really that crucial? Because it's going to take all this time, and we're going to have very little time for this very important emotional scene. So you're always balancing how far you can get and how to get there. First AD comes to you and says, how much time do you need for this setup? Often it's a bit cheeky. I'll say, well, how much time do I have? But that is based in this idea that I need to know how I'm going to align. And if he says, well, I need 15 minutes to do these things, that's great. Great, 15. I'll try and get us there. I might need 20. And then you're calculating how to get to that point, because you want the day's work in its entirety. That's going to be a successful piece of work. If you hijack the day in technical things, then it makes it much more challenging for everybody else. And that's important. If you are seen to be able to collaborate on that level, that you understand and respect that everybody's got to get everybody's work, everybody needs their space, and you are a part of it, that will get you a lot farther with producers and directors and actors. Because if you're the person who's demanding, or this is another good lesson, if it didn't work for you, you quietly fix it. If something is wrong, you let the people need to know. But if you come in and shake your head, or if you make it known that something was unsatisfactory to you, that's a really interesting psychological effect on the people who maybe thought it was great. I think you have to be very cautious about what you express you think the overall goal is. I often say, I don't think I'll ever get to 100% happy with anything that I do, but if I can get to 70, that's pretty good. Because you're always going to make cuts and changes, and something's going to happen. And overall, nobody's going to see that, oh, that backdrop was maybe a stop too bright in that take, and then we did this other cut and it was different. Those are, if you think of them the right way, they're fun little things that you're going to get away with if you're doing everything else right. But if you come marching in, you say, oh, I need 10 more minutes, I got to figure this thing out, this is super important. That is not important to the overall scope of all of the people's work that day, is that little thing. So you have to be very careful where you're going to put the flag in the ground. Because especially as you're trying to get along and establish yourself, you cannot be seen as a person who gets in the way. If you facilitate and you help and you make conscious and intelligent compromises for your work that allows everybody else's work to go through, that's longevity. We are a group of people from all different viewpoints and different talents, different backgrounds. It's great. And we're working on this one thing. And that one thing is a collaborative effort. And then it's viewed by a whole other group of people. So it's really important that everybody gets a voice that's centered through good direction into one thing, so that it's conveyed out to those people. I think that's important. So I think it's important to realize as a cinematographer that you are of these many voices, equal. And you offer opinions, and you listen to other opinions, and you learn from them. Because oftentimes you're just thinking about yours. And being a filmmaker, cinematographer, filmmaker, being a human being is about being curious. It's about being curious about people. And so you have to allow yourself to be curious about why and how people think, because it's only going to help you convey through that point an emotional feeling out to another group of people who all have different ways of thinking, different backgrounds, different ideas and different opinions. So I've always tried to give up on this idea is that I know exactly what to do. Because if I say that, well, then the whole idea is lost. When I started as a camera assistant and when I started working in this business, I was very young. I was 19. There were no smartphones, no social media at the time. It was sort of just pre that area. In fact, I had a pager. I mean, look at that, for the first couple of years. But even so, even then, there's an overwhelming sense of like FOMO. I can't imagine what that's like coming up. I can't imagine. I can't imagine what it's like coming up, because even me, I still suffer from it. If you look on Instagram, you look on social media, and you see these people doing these great things, and you go, oh, wow, how come I'm not getting that opportunity? I think that's hard to deal with. I think but that sense of FOMO has been around for a while. It is exponential now because of the ability for, what we all have to realize is a curated sense of somebody else's life and work. And so it's difficult because it can really play with you. That said, what a great place social media, because you get tapped into what people are doing. So it's giving you this idea of like, oh, these great ideas, but also why am I not a part of those ideas? But that comes with a hypersensitivity of the critical assessment of your own work, which I think is a valuable thing. You need to have a constant, like, am I doing the right thing? What is the next thing? Like a self-assessment. Crippling self-assessment? No, but like a self-assessment, because you've got to push yourself forward. Because nobody ever wants to be in a point where it's like, all right, I did it, great. Because then maybe you lost the drive. Okay, so that sense of FOMO and those sorts of things, are you more? I still have it. Even if you've accomplished a certain amount of work and you get to work and you get to do this job, you're still thinking, oh, but what if I'm in this room? What if I can get into that room? Or why am I not? Like, it's a little bit less of why am I not? I think that's probably a dangerous way of thinking. It's like, why am I not doing this? It's like, how do I get to that? And that's true of everybody. But again, realign that sensibility to drive. How do I, instead of taking that in a hard way and it's sort of ruining my ability to push forward, just make it a goal and make sure you realize that it's about that path and that journey to someplace rather than getting there. Because there's all of these great things to learn and try and accomplish, to fail and succeed on the way. And those things will come. Oftentimes, so let's say there's that project that you wished you had, like that one marker. Like, oh, I really want that. There'll be a point where you'll go, two things. You'll go, this is the one. This is going to be it. And it goes and it happens and people see it and nobody says anything. And then somebody will come up and go, oh my gosh, I saw that thing that you did and it was not the job you thought it was. So to focus on how to get that one thing, or it's kind of irrelevant. It's going to waste your time. I think it's important that you take the time to enjoy the journey through and just put it into the work what it is. And again, like I said before, don't focus on this one as like the ones. This and next, this and next. One thing I think that's important about cinematographers, and this is part of that whole conversation about different backgrounds, different viewpoints, different opinions, different culture, different age, all those differences that we celebrate because of that idea of all these viewpoints that are important, is that I think all of us can read all the manuals, we can watch all the YouTube videos, we can know about all the equipment or not. We can all find that base level. That's not what's going to make you unique. It's about how you think about things and how you communicate it and how you collaborate. That's the unique part. We all know 4K cameras. We all know lights are, bicolor. All those things we can cover. Everybody can get that as a baseline. Fair enough. That's your responsibility. What it is you bring as a person is your ideas, your comprehension, and how you work, how you think, and how you manage those things. That is what you need to find in yourself and be okay with, and always be working on. Always be thinking about how to work with people. You'll learn from people all the time. That idea that you are picking little ideas off of people when you're younger, newspaper skirt, oh, I'm going to use that one. I still do it to this day. I'm looking at this right now going, yeah, that's cool. Oh yeah, okay. And you're always learning and observing it and not saying, it's dangerous to think I would do it differently. I think that's an interesting thing. Don't do the whole, oh, I would do this differently. It's like, I wonder, oh, this is interesting that somebody did this way. There's something in here. That's interesting to think about it. So if you cultivate that idea of what makes you unique is your understanding, and you're constantly working on like that idea of your opinions, your ideas, and how you share them, that's your cinematography. The rest of it is just your technical responsibilities, which if you had to be a completely technical cinematographer, you'd have no time for the rest of it. But that's why you want to work with people who are great gaffers, who are experiencing that, great camera people, great rental houses, people you can go, I have this comprehension, I have this goal, but I don't know XYZ. And I was at Panavision yesterday talking to Jerry. Okay, I'm trying to figure this thing out, and he's got all this knowledge from all these other places. And you go, oh, that's it. I never thought of that. And you have this idea of, so that's what I think is important. Learn to cultivate your sensibilities and your openness and your understanding and your ideas. That's your cinematography.